Imagine waking up to an empty Bitcoin wallet or finding out the exchange you trusted lost billions overnight. This is the reality of owning Bitcoin, and since 2009, hackers have stolen more than $120 billion worth of Bitcoin, and there's no signs of it slowing down. That's why I spend days digging through every major Bitcoin hack in history so I can show you how they happened, how they reshaped crypto, and the one thing you need to do to make sure you don't become the next victim. Let's go back to 2011, just 2 years after Bitcoin was created. Imagine being the first person in history to have your Bitcoin stolen straight from your wallet. That's exactly what happened to a user on the Bitcoin Talk forum named Alan Vane. This was one of the first ever major Bitcoin hacks and is now known as the Alan Vane hack. Back then, Bitcoin was brand new, dirt cheap, and hardly on anyone's radar. But early adopters like Alan Vane saw its potential and had mined tens of thousands of Bitcoin. One day, he logged into his mining account on a site called Slushpool and noticed something strange. It seemed to have been compromised. Thinking the issue was just a stolen password, he quickly changed it, convinced that would solve the problem. But that single assumption cost him 25,000 Bitcoin, worth about $500,000 at the time, or nearly $3 billion today. When he finally checked his Bitcoin wallet, it was already too late. All of his coins had already been transferred to another wallet address. Panicked, he tried something that today we know wouldn't work, restoring an old backup of his wallet with his private key, hoping to somehow reverse a transaction. But on the blockchain, once a transaction is confirmed, it's a done deal. But it didn't take long for him to discover the real cause of his stolen Bitcoin. It wasn't his Slushpool account that had been hacked. He had downloaded some malware onto his computer and it stole his wallet's private key. And while he had encrypted his private key in a file, he admitted, "That doesn't do me much good when someone or some Trojan has direct access to my computer." This hack revealed early on that the biggest risk wasn't the blockchain itself, but keeping the keys to your wallet on an internet-connected device. But Alan Vane's loss was nothing compared to the next hack. The 2011 Mt. Gox hacks is one of the most infamous hacks in crypto history and is still the largest Bitcoin hack ever recorded. If you were buying or selling Bitcoin in 2011, chances are it went through Mt. Gox. At its peak, the exchange handled over 70% of all Bitcoin trades worldwide. It wasn't just another exchange, it was literally the exchange. But there was one massive problem. Every Bitcoin they had was held in a hot wallet. Combine that with weak security, and you had a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. The first cracks appeared in June 2011. Hackers stole 25,000 Bitcoin straight from Mt. Gox's hot wallet. Days later, it got worse. A hacker leaked a database of 60,000 user accounts, including usernames, emails, and hashed passwords on popular forums like Pastebin. This led to a credential stuffing attack where hackers used these stolen credentials to access users' accounts. They manipulated the market by placing massive sell orders, causing Bitcoin's price on Mt. Gox to crash to 1 cent for a brief period. Mt. Gox claimed to had fixed the issues, reassuring everyone that their funds were safe. But behind the scenes, the real damage was just getting started. From 2011 to 2014, Mt. Gox suffered ongoing thefts, with a bulk of losses attributed to a flaw called transaction malleability. This flaw allowed hackers to alter transaction IDs, making it appear that withdrawals failed, letting them steal the funds multiple times. But it only got worse. Mt. Gox's private keys were stored on unencrypted files on their own servers, so once hackers discovered this, they just siphoned Bitcoin straight from their wallets, and they did this for years. It wasn't until February 2014 until users realized that something was seriously wrong. Withdrawals began failing, so Mt. Gox froze all withdrawals and trading, blaming a technical issue. But by February 28th, the truth came out. Mt. Gox declared bankruptcy. It was revealed that 750,000 Bitcoin belonging to customers and another 100,000 Bitcoin of Mt. Gox's own reserve had completely vanished. At the time, it was valued at about $350 million or $70 billion today. Obviously, the news caused chaos. Bitcoin's price plummeted more than 30%, and protesters even gathered outside of Mt. Gox's Tokyo headquarters demanding answers, but they didn't get any. Later on, 200,000 Bitcoin was found in an old wallet somehow, but the rest of it was never recovered. But the collapse of Mt. Gox wasn't just another hack. It was a turning point for the entire crypto industry as we know it today. It forced the industry to adopt security audits, proof of reserves, and real-time monitoring to try to prevent this from ever happening again. Unfortunately, as these next hacks show, these changes weren't enough. But while Mt. Gox was imploding, another so-called hack wrecked early Bitcoin users. However, many people believe this wasn't a hack at all. This was the 2011 MyBitcoin wallet scam. MyBitcoin was one of the first ever Bitcoin wallet services, launched in 2010. Back then, secure and convenient ways to store Bitcoin barely existed. That's why MyBitcoin exploded in popularity among early adopters, even though it was completely anonymous and totally unregulated. The service was simple. It offered a web-based wallet where you hand over your Bitcoin and they promise to keep it safe. Think of it as a bare bones version of Coinbase, except without the safety measures and regulations we have today. But there was one massive red flag. It was ran by an anonymous person named Tom Williams. And if there's one thing we know in crypto, it's to never trust in a non-Tom. At least, we know that now. So you might be able to guess what happened next. Out of nowhere in early August 2011, MyBitcoin just disappeared. The website went completely offline, and when users tried logging in, they were met with a cryptic message claiming the service had been hacked. According to that message, half of all Bitcoin stored in the MyBitcoin wallet was gone. But the so-called hack didn't add up. The operators never shared any blockchain transaction IDs or any technical details. They just said, our hot wallets were hacked, but don't worry, we still have some in our cold storage, and they just left it at that. The lack of transparency brought all the conspiracy theorists out of the woodworks across multiple Bitcoin forums. Many started speculating it wasn't a hack at all, but an exit scam pulled off by the operators. But weeks later, MyBitcoin briefly resurfaced online, promising to refund 49% of every user's balance. Refunds were issued, but the other 51% of funds were never recovered. Soon after, MyBitcoin vanished for good, and Tom Williams, along with the other operators, went silent and disappeared without a trace. Even today, no one knows exactly how much Bitcoin was stolen because record keeping back then wasn't really a thing, but it's estimated that 78,000 Bitcoin, worth an estimated $600,000 was taken. Today that would be worth $9 billion. But here's where things get even more mysterious. Recently, on-chain analysts traced a transfer of 80,000 Bitcoin to the investment firm Galaxy Digital, which executed a $9 billion sale for a long-term holder. These coins are apparently linked to wallets tied to MyBitcoin, suggesting they may belong to the hacker or maybe even Tom Williams himself, but nothing has been confirmed officially. The MyBitcoin scam was one of the first wake-up calls that trusting a custodial wallet means giving up total control of your crypto, and now, even over a decade later, more than 1 million investors still rely on custodial wallets like exchanges, proving that this lesson was never learned and that it's still a threat today. But another risk that still exists today, which was originally revealed by the 2016 Bitfinex hack, is that a false sense of security can lead to some of the biggest losses in crypto history. By 2016, Bitfinex had become one of the world's largest crypto exchanges. Hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins were traded there daily. Advanced traders loved it for its leverage and margin trading. To make users feel safe, Bitfinex partnered with BitGo, a US security company, to launch multi-signature wallets. The idea was simple. Multiple approvals were needed to move funds, so even if one key was compromised, attackers couldn't drain your account, or so everyone thought. But on August 2nd, 2016, hackers found a weakness. In nearly 2,000 unauthorized transactions, they stole 119,000 Bitcoin, worth $66 million then, or over $14 billion today. Investigators believe they hacked Bitfinex's internal system and manipulated the withdrawal process, basically tricking BitGo into co-signing fraudulent transfers. When the news finally got out, the market went into a full-blown panic mode. Bitcoin's price crashed 20% within hours, Bitfinex froze all withdrawals and trading, and when Bitfinex came back online, their next move sparked even more outrage. The $66 million loss was so massive that Bitfinex faced bankruptcy, so they made a very controversial call. They decided to take 36% from every user's balance, even those untouched by the hack. This effectively distributed the loss across every user's account. But there was a silver lining. To make it right, Bitfinex issued their own BFX token, basically IOUs worth $1 each for the stolen funds, and then over the next 8 months, they bought them back in cash or let users trade them in for shares in their parent company, iFinex. Now fast forward to 2022, and the Department of Justice seized over 94,000 of these stolen Bitcoin from a New York couple who had been laundering it for years. It was one of the largest financial seizures in history. That Bitcoin is still held by the Department of Justice today, and a court even recommended returning it to Bitfinex, but now you have users claiming that they should get the Bitcoin, even though Bitfinex is saying, well, they already repaid users, so there's no saying who or how or if this Bitcoin will ever get distributed. This hack proved even advanced security features like multi-signature wallets can fail if implemented poorly, and clearly this lesson wasn't learned. In 2025, Bybit lost $1.5 billion in ETH after unknowingly signing a malicious multi-sig contract. But this next scam was nothing like anyone had ever seen before in crypto. On the surface, it looked like a legit project, but it turned into one of the biggest Bitcoin losses in history. Today it's known as the Plus Token Ponzi. In 2018, crypto hype was at its peak. The year before, Bitcoin had just hit a new all-time high of $20,000, meaning new investors were flooding in, and scammers were getting more creative by the day. That's when Plus Token launched. It posed as a South Korean project offering insane returns for investors. The pitch was very enticing. Deposit your Bitcoin or ETH, convert it to Plus tokens, and earn 8 to 30% every month just for holding the tokens in their wallet. Also, you could get a bonus if you referred new investors. On the surface, it looked really good. Along with their sleek mobile wallet, they had their own exchange and flashy marketing campaigns plastered all over Asia. The team even hosted in-person seminars and workshops to lure in investors. Early adopters bragged about their payouts, showing off screenshots of their huge returns, and everyone was convinced that they were going to get rich. But behind the glitz, there were two massive red flags. First off, it wasn't even based out of South Korea. It was secretly being run out of China. And second, they were paying old investors with new investors' money. But even then, by mid-2019, Plus Token had grown to more than 3 million members. Together, users deposited nearly 200,000 Bitcoin, 6.4 million ETH, and other cryptos worth an estimated $3 billion at the time, or about $50 billion today. But in June 2019, the cracks began to show. Withdrawals began failing, and finally, the operators vanished with all of the crypto. But on one Bitcoin transaction, they left a chilling and, dare I say, foreign message. Sorry, we have run. Authorities eventually stepped in, and Chinese police ended up arresting 109 people tied to the scam, with 14 earning prison sentences, but most of the stolen Bitcoin and ETH was never recovered. Instead, the remaining scammers slowly dumped funds on exchanges like Huobi and OKX, causing sudden sell-offs and contributing to Bitcoin's price crashes in late 2019 and 2020. In the end, Plus Token went down as the largest Ponzi scheme in history. This was also an early sign that crypto scammers thrive on false promises, hype, and emotions, and even after the Plus Token scheme, more schemes like this pop up every day because new investors fall for these same old tricks. But even the Plus Token Ponzi doesn't compare to this next one. The 2018 Quadriga CX scam remains one of crypto's biggest unsolved mysteries. Quadriga CX was Canada's go-to crypto exchange. Launched in 2013 by Gerald Cotton and Michael Patron, it quickly grew to processing hundreds of millions in trades, but behind the scenes, the exchange was falling apart, and when it finally collapsed, it happened fast. In early 2018, Canadian banks froze Quadriga's accounts after spotting suspicious transactions and questioning how the company was handling customers' funds. This move halted withdrawals for months, leaving users furious and hinting that something was probably wrong. Then oddly, in late 2018, Gerald updated his will, leaving everything to his wife, but just 12 days later, while on his honeymoon in India, Cotton reportedly died from complications related to Crohn's disease. But the story didn't add up. A misspelled death certificate, a closed casket funeral, and no local media coverage in India fueled instant rumors that Cotton's death had been staged. And then came the bombshell. Weeks later, Quadriga announced it couldn't access $145 million worth of customers' crypto because Cotton controlled the private keys to the exchange's cold wallet. So blockchain investigators dug a little deeper, and what they found changed everything. There were no cold wallets. All the funds had been drained before Cotton's death. According to Canada's securities regulator, Quadriga wasn't just poorly run, it was a Ponzi scheme. Cotton had secretly been creating fake accounts, trading against his own customers, gambling millions away on other exchanges, and then using deposits from new customers to pay off old ones. So Cotton's death wasn't the cause of the missing Bitcoin, it just exposed the fraud that had been going on for years. Even today, only a fraction of the lost funds have been recovered. Rumors still swirl that Cotton faked his death to escape prosecution, and Netflix even turned the saga into a documentary called Trust No One: The Hunt for the Crypto King. But despite all these unanswered questions, this scandal taught the crypto industry a painfully obvious lesson. Giving a single person total control over a crypto exchange, or even just your crypto, is a disaster waiting to unfold. But even reputable exchanges aren't safe from hacks. The 2020 KuCoin hack resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars being stolen and sparking a high-stakes chase across multiple blockchains in an attempt to get it all back. KuCoin had earned the nickname the People's Exchange. Based in Singapore, it had more than 6 million users trading everything from Bitcoin to hundreds of lesser-known tokens. The platform was booming to say the least. But like most exchanges, KuCoin relied on hot wallets to process daily trades. That meant certain wallets were always online and always vulnerable. And hackers were well aware of this, so on September 25th, 2020, they accessed KuCoin's internal systems, likely through a phishing attack or malware, and stole their wallet's private key. Over the next several hours, they drained 2,015 Bitcoin, 11,480 ETH, and over over 150 other cryptocurrencies. In total, the estimated value was $281 million, or about $400 million today. And the attackers didn't waste any time laundering funds. They swapped stolen Ethereum tokens on decentralized exchanges like Uniswap, converted altcoins into Bitcoin, and used mixers to break transactions into smaller, harder to trace pieces. But investigators soon identified the culprits: Lazarus, a state-sponsored hacking group from North Korea, notorious for high-profile cyber attacks worldwide. KuCoin CEO went live the very next day, suspending deposits and withdrawals, but promising users they wouldn't lose a single cent. But then something rare happened: a massive industry-wide rescue effort. Stablecoin issuers froze stolen tokens, certain projects reissued assets to nullify compromised coins, and crypto exchanges even blacklisted hacker-controlled wallet addresses. Because of this unprecedented coordination, $234 million, or about 84% of all the funds, were recovered within months, and KuCoin covered the remaining losses using its insurance fund, fully reimbursing all its users. Nonetheless, this hack goes to show that even top-tier crypto exchanges are not immune to massive breaches, and even though all the funds were returned this time, as long as crypto exchanges rely on hot wallets to store your funds, they're never truly safe. Now, this next hack isn't as famous as KuCoin, but it delivered one of the harshest lessons in crypto history. Sometimes the biggest threat isn't a faceless hacker, but the person that you thought you could trust the most. Enter the 2024 DMM Bitcoin hack. Launched in 2018, DMM became one of Japan's most popular crypto exchanges. It was fully licensed and regulated by Japan's top financial watchdog, the very agency created after the Mt. Gox collapse to protect investors. It had everything: a nice user interface, mobile trading, it even had its own mining firm. To most investors, it seemed safe. But behind the scenes, the same North Korean hackers who were behind the KuCoin attack were plotting their next strike, except this time they weren't going to use brute force, they used social engineering. In March 2024, posing as a recruiter on LinkedIn, a Lazarus hacker sent a coding test to an employee at Jinko, a software wallet provider that DMM relied on. Hidden in that simple test was a script that leaked session data, giving Lazarus access to Jinko's system. And 2 months later, they got to work. The hackers gained control of DMM Bitcoin's wallet management system. So on May 30th, during what appeared to be a routine transaction, Lazarus maliciously altered the transaction details, and with a single click, 4,502 Bitcoin worth about $305 million vanished into hacker-controlled wallets. From there, Lazarus split the Bitcoin into batches, washed it through CoinJoin mixers, and even bridged some to shady markets like Huonie in Cambodia. Then DMM Bitcoin froze withdrawals immediately and promised to reimburse customers by buying the Bitcoin back with help from its parent company, but the damage was way too much. By December 2024, DMM announced that it would shut down completely, transferring remaining user accounts to another exchange. Despite being fully regulated in one of the world's strictest crypto markets in the world, the DMM hack proved that even regulation won't keep your Bitcoin safe. All it took was one employee to trust one random person to surpass millions of dollars worth of security measures. But this next hack was truly a first of its kind. The 2025 Nubitech hack turned the exchange into the center of a politically charged cyber attack that stunned the crypto world. Nubitex launched in 2017 and quickly became Iran's go-to platform for buying and selling Bitcoin. With over 7 million users and more than $11 billion in inflows, it was essential for everyday Iranians trying to access global markets under heavy sanctions. But Nubitex also had some really dark ties: transactions with ransomware operators, sanctioned media outlets, and even groups linked to terrorist financing. So on June 18th, 2025, a pro-Israel hacktivist group called Predatory Sparrow breached Nubitex's systems. But unlike typical hacks that steal for profit, this attack had a different goal: to make a statement. The hackers exploited a massive flaw in Nubitex's access control, allowing them to drain their hot wallets, moving about $90 million worth of crypto, including 500 Bitcoin. But here's where it gets wild. Instead of laundering or selling the funds, they sent them all to a vanity address with names like, well, yeah, I'm not gonna say that. But the thing is, these addresses are cryptographically impossible to access, so the funds that were sent there are lost forever. But after digging into all these cases, one thing is crystal clear: your crypto will never truly be safe if you're letting someone else like a crypto exchange hold it for you. Crypto exchanges prioritize speed and profit first. Security is more of an afterthought. And sure, some exchanges offer insurance policies to make you feel safe, but as history shows, even if you were reimbursed, it could take years. Personally, I'm not willing to take that risk. Are you? That's why I store my crypto in a cold wallet away from hackers, where I remain in full control. So if you want to stay safe from all these hacks that I just showed you, you need to get a cold wallet too. But if you're not sure how cold wallets work or where to even start, I spent the last 5 years testing and reviewing all the best options. So everything you need to know about cold wallets is in this next video. I'll see you over there. God bless.